Yes, it's finally here. Oh, yes. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode. As you've seen, we got a new package this week. Not only did we get a new package, but this is the week we also get to set up the quarantine tank. Before we do get into the quarantine tank, I do want to talk about an update on the 180.5. All the equipment is here except for wave makers, pumps, and lights. Those actually should be here next week, so I'm very excited. Between that, the plumbing should also be arriving the end of next week. I was really hoping to get some inch to metric units that I believe CoralView makes. They haven't come in stock. I've really been waiting for that, and there still doesn't look like they're coming in stock, so I'm just gonna have to pull the trigger on the inch to metric couplers the BRS sells. Before we do get into setting up the quarantine, I want to take you down, show you guys the sump, and kind of get your feedback on where I should be putting the equipment. I'm kind of considering either running inside the sump or outside, or maybe even alongside the cabinet. Let's check it out. One of the dilemmas I'm having is where I'm gonna run the equipment. The biggest piece of equipment that's missing is a calcium reactor, which is gonna be probably as big as a Pax Bellum, but I have a few options. Would you rather run your equipment inside, in my scenario, in this chamber here? So you see the Pax Bellum and the Avast Marine Calcster in the back. So that's one option, is run it in this compartment here. But I know what a lot of you guys are gonna say. The Pax Bellum is such a beautiful piece of equipment. You probably would hate to run it in a sump because it gets dirty, you get buildup on it, and it's probably not something you're looking to do. If I do run them here in the sump, it's obviously gonna give me more space here in the compartment on the left. So this is a compartment to the left. Obviously the sump sits in here. But you guys are probably gonna say, why don't you just run in here? You have tons of space. Well, you're absolutely right. There is tons of space, but I want a false wall here made out of, I'm actually having it made by Reef Tech 1. They're out in the UK. So it's gonna be a face plate. It's gonna have a GHL, maybe Ecotech logo that lights up. It's gonna hold the Proflex controller, the KHD, the Ion, as well as the 2.1 doser, as well as probably having it hold two controllers for the MP40s, 2 or 4, I still don't know. But what's gonna happen when that piece of equipment is put here, it's obviously gonna cut down on the accessibility we have to the back. So anytime I need to do any maintenance on the Pax Bellum, because again, you do need to harvest the Kato, it's gonna be a little bit difficult doing it on this side. So I've actually been talking to Reef Tech, and I think we came up with a solution, and that is putting the faceplate that's gonna cover this whole front part here on rollers. So if we put rollers on the bottom, I'm able to roll the whole thing out, and it should give me access to the calcium reactor that's gonna be back here, as well as the Pax Bellum if I do decide to put it back here. So I'd love to hear your guys' feedback on where you guys think I should put all the equipment. So I'd really love to hear what you guys recommend. I still got to get this figured out. You know, that's also been part of the delay. There's just so many things to cover. Now that I got you guys all caught up with the 180.5, we did receive a package this week. This is going to be everything I needed to set up the quarantine tank. Everything I did buy here was purchased from Amazon. If you guys were wondering what it is or how much it is, or maybe if you want to check it out for yourself for a quarantine tank, I'm gonna have a link in the description for you guys to check it out. I wanna say this whole quarantine tank so far has been under $60. Actually more like 70 if you count the stand I made and the paint. So about 70 bucks I've been able to set up a quarantine, very inexpensive. The only reason before, like I'd mentioned, why I hadn't set one up, I just didn't have the space in the apartment. Starting out first, I did go with Orlushai, I think I'm pronouncing that right. But this is a heater for both freshwater and saltwater. I want to say this one's rated for 20 gallons. I think it's 100. I want to say it's 100 watt. One of the main reasons I went with this one, yes, it came with a little temp probe that I can put so I could obviously see where the temperature is at. Next, obviously it's, yes, a box, but inside the box is going to be a sponge filter. So this is what I chose to go with. I could have used an overflow or one of those pinwheel ones, but I decided I'd have a lot better luck, at least for me and what I'm looking to do, to use a sponge filter. So that's what I went with. I did go with an oversized one. I think this one's rated for about 60 gallons, but I figured the more contact surface the bacteria has, probably the easier it is going to be to export or take out the ammonia and nitrites. The beating heart for that sponge filter is going to be this air pump. One interesting thing I thought I'd let you guys know, you may notice, at least if you're shopping on Amazon, there's two versions of these pumps. There's a UL listed and non-UL listed. And I was like, what the heck's the difference? The non-UL listed ones are a lot more inexpensive. And I figured, what the hell is UL? I've seen UL listed before on electronics. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? Well, my research found that the UL listed pretty much protects you, or at least your insurance will step in and protect you if the product is UL listed. If it's not UL listed, means it hasn't been certified. So if it did catch fire, your home catches fire, you're not going to be getting a good boat. I'll be honest though, I went with the non-UL listed version. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the home doesn't catch on fire, nothing happens, but we should be fine. To run the air from the pump to the sponge filter, this thing came somewhat pretty nicely packaged. I guess all the packaging fell apart. I think this is 8 foot. It was about $1 on Amazon. A total of 8 feet. I figured this should have been enough. One thing I wasn't sure of is if I needed an air stone. I'd never owned one of these, so I didn't know how these, I mean, in theory, I know how they operate, but I didn't know if the air hose just connected here to the top, or if you need to put an air stone or just fit the line all the way down. Luckily, I'm able to see there's a small little nipple here, and that's where it connects. Pretty big. This is my hand. Pretty good size. Without any further ado, let's go get some salt water in the tank, get the heater in there, get everything going, so we can then start the cycle with this quarantine tank. We got a manual in the box. Who in the heck needs a manual for an air pump? We don't. I went ahead and installed everything inside the tank already that arrived. So you can see in the very front, we have the sponge filter with the airline attached. We got the heater in the back, and then we also have the thermometer little probe running down there. It's actually running through the suction cup. So got all that, got the pump obviously installed here, got it not yet hooked up to power. So all there really is to do now is obviously fill it with water. I'm gonna fill it with RODI water, and I'm actually gonna mix the salt in here. Since there's no livestock in there, no bacteria in there, nothing, it really doesn't matter if you do it like that. You would obviously never want to do that with any fish or any sort of livestock inside the tank. All right. Okay, so for the salt, as you guys already know, I'm going to be using Tropic Marine on my main display. It only made sense to also use it in here. So what we're going to do, we're going to start making some RODI water. I don't have my bins set up yet, so it's going to take me a little bit, but we're going to start making water. We're going to, I think I have a 50-gallon brew container actually already filled. Yep, sure enough, yes I do. I think this is 10 gallons. This is the little container they make. So what I'll do, I'll put this water in there. I'll probably need to make another one if it is. I think this is 10 gallons, yeah. We'll have to make another one. So we should have it filled with 2 of these. I'm going to be using the Sifrax to help with the biological surface area for the bacteria to grab on. Not having any rock or sand is going to limit that. The sponge filter is certainly going to help, but want to add a little bit more. Instead of adding this really big bag of Sifrax in here, I figured what better way to mount it than using, here I'll show you a demonstration of it. So this is how it starts. It's a piece of zip tie. And then I use coral glue on the end of the zip tie. Unless you have a zip tie that's bigger than this, it won't go through. But if it goes through like mine, use coral glue. And then once it's all finalized, you use another piece on the opposite end to cap it. You can see there. And what I've actually done, it's almost like it was meant to be. But this sponge itself has cutouts. You could see them here. And I'm able to actually stack them all the way around. It's going to fit a total of, I think 6 is what I counted. So I'm going to start lining those up, and that's obviously with that in the filter, it's going to be tons of surface area for the bacteria to grab onto. So I'm happy how everything looks. It's now time to add the salt. There's nothing crazy about adding salt. Again, if you are doing this, please make sure you don't have absolutely no livestock whatsoever, because you can certainly kill fish, corals. I mean, it just wouldn't be cool. All there is to do now is just grab, in my case, my Tropic Marin. I think I forgot exactly how many cups it was going to take. But one important thing, I'm actually not going to be bringing this tank up to full salinity. The salinity is going to be run at, if you saw last video that I just published on Friday for cycling a tank, I'm going to run it to 1.015. So it's very important. If you guys did miss that video, I highly urge you to check that video out. But yes, the salinity is not going to be run to 1.0 or 1.025. It's going to be 1.015. And adding is very simple. You can see I've added actually a pump in there just to certainly get everything mixed a lot quicker. Surely enough, the bubbles in there would mix the water eventually, but I just really didn't want to wait. Once I was done adding the salt, I did let the tank sit, I think, for a total of 24 hours just to make sure the pH and everything else stabilized. The tank's been sitting for a total of 24 hours. I feel pretty comfortable. I actually checked the pH. The pH is nice and balanced and within range, which tells me the salt is fully mixed. Everything's been running. I really have no complaints with it. Obviously, there's not much going on, so you know, how much could really go wrong? So now I'm sure you guys want to see exactly how I go cycling about this tank, and that's something I want to talk about. So I'm totally gonna cycle this tank. I don't know if you guys saw the video that went up a few days ago, but I talked about some crazy misconceptions not only I had about cycling, but sad to say a lot of the reefing community has about cycling. I think a lot of us had it wrong. There's just so much information out there being gathered by the one and only Dr. Tim himself. And of course, I'm not trying to promote this product. This is just what I'm be using. But the method I'm be showing you, whether you use Dr. Tim's, whether you use any other product out there, you're gonna be able to follow along. Use these new methods that you're going to be learning to cycle any reef tank. And again, with any product you want. If you don't want to use Dr. Tim's, good for you. You can use any other product and you should expect similar results. I wanted to specifically make a video only about cycling because again, it's a completely new method that I've learned, and I certainly don't want to rush through the information I'll be giving in video. So I figured instead of making this video super long, I'm going to save it for next week. We're going to dive into full detail on exactly from this point forward how not only I'm going to be cycling this tank, but I'm also going to be cycling the 180 and every other tank I probably have in the future. So guys, we're going to end this video here. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys do have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them down in the comment box below. So thank you very much for watching. As always, happy reefing.